Welcome to our live stream.
It's not.
Good afternoon. We'll just abandon the microphone altogether until Mark comes out and gets on me for not using it. Sorry to all of you at home who may have chosen to tune in and watch the show. If you can't hear me, you'll be able to hear Paul. So thank you all so much for coming out today. Mark Auditorium at the University of Southern Mississippi. I'm going to keep this talk brief because we get to hear you again for free. I'm hoping no one plans to come to the talk, but completely, not come to the organ concert. That would be your own prerogative, but please feel free to stay, and we hope you'll stay. So today we have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Dr. Paul Andersen and Dr. Jeff McLelland to talk really about all things organs here in town, the instrument itself. It seems like there are a lot of former students of Dr. Andersen, so thank you all for coming out and support. Help me welcome to the stage Dr. Andersen and Dr. McLelland.
It's so good to be with you today with so many of my former students. My goodness gracious. I was wondering, could you show your hands if you're a former student? Yeah, I see. Yeah, some former students are, well, my goodness. Well, the first thing, I'd like to go through, there are a bunch of pictures up there. And so that picture there was taken at St. Michael and St. George, the Church St. Michael and St. George in St. Louis. I had that commissioned in 1965 before I came down here. And that was a few years ago, and that was when I was much younger. Can we have the next one, please? Oh, that's my first program that I played at Temple Baptist Church. And I played the symphonic chorale, Jesu meine Freude of Karl Gaillard, and other pieces, the F major toccata and E major Lubeck, and that was a very fine time. We have next. Oh, here's the first recital I played at Trinity Church down there in 1969, and that had the BACH list on it and the E major Bruins and so forth. Could we have the next one, please? Oh, that was my professor at Drake University. That was taken in 1974 at Eastman when he was there and inscribed to me. And could we have the next one, please?
Standing in front of a Holtkamp organ.
Oh, yeah, I studied that in front of Holtkamp organ. Oh, and that's 1974, I think. That's Warren Hutton on the left, and Arthur Poyster, my teacher at Syracuse, and me in that loud suit that I bought at Hamilton Graves in Laurel. Yeah, could we have the next one, please? Oh, that's the same suit, and that's Warren Hutton and one of his students, and that's Arthur Poyster, and he was just talking to that girl, but whatever. Yeah. Now, this week we got a grant, a Rockefeller grant in 1966, I think it was, for new music. And so they sent in all of these scores that we had to go through and choose. On the left is Dr. Presser, Dr. William Presser. He got his doctorate at Eastman in 1953, and then there's me. And in the middle is Bob Hayes. I think he's still living, but I'm not certain. Then Bert Gower, he's living someplace else now. And then John Donahue, he's living in town here now. Could we have that? Oh, this is 71. These are my students and some others. That's Dr. Vernon DeTar at, he was the organist at, in New York. And left down the front is David Lambert, then me, then Paul Lee, then Janet Mayo, and then Dr. DeTar. And then Sherilyn's here someplace. And then Marilyn McBride and Steve Roberts and Ernie Hoffman. Yeah. Could we have the next one, please? Oh, then I dedicated the new Allen over at Parkway Heights in 1970, whatever it was, 1972, yeah. I had longer hair in those days. Yeah. Oh, and then we got Heinz Lohmann to come down here. He edited the Bach organ works for Breitkopf and Hertel. Now, they had a long history of editing, publishing the Bach organ works going back to the 18th century. And he edited that, the new edition at that time. That's Heinz Lohmann from Germany. He's passed on now, and that's his wife. And that's Tom Ed Moore, doctoral student here, and he's passed on too. If we'd have the next one. Oh, that's, I don't know, Jackie Edwards and Denny Thames and me looking at some music. I don't remember what that was. Yeah. That's him and Jeff Clareman. Go, you tell.
Well, we went to. Do I have a singer? Yeah, we went to Texas to play a bunch of organs back about 1985 or 86 or something like that, and because I was looking to get a new organ for First Presbyterian that was just being built out on a highway west of us.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so that's us playing one of the organs on that trip. More about that trip later.
Oh, that's in Washington, D.C., about 1980. Jeff, that's Paul Lee on the right, and that's Jeff, and then George Imagulio. Paul and Jeff had won the MTNA national competition, and George was the state president. We were up there, and so I think this is after the competition in the hotel room there, and so we were much younger in those days, too. George, unfortunately, has passed on. Oh, yeah. I got this brochure from Hewlett's funeral home, and it's a paragraph in there about the pipe organ. It's an interesting organ. It was put in 1933, and it's a pipe organ. It's kind of in the basement. But I played a funeral on it in 1965 when I came down here. And it's, as I said, a pipe organ. They spared no expense at that funeral parlor to have the very best. And he got the Wicks pipe organ down there. Now, nowadays, they'd have Hammond or something like that, or a keyboard. But the Hammond organ was not invented yet. The first Hammond was sold in 1935. This is the pipe organ, and it's still working. They service it regularly. It's been a long time there.
I played a lot of funerals on that organ as well. You could never practice on that organ because there was always people in there, you know, and so you'd get to it and you'd push a stop. Oh, that didn't work this time. So you're just like making it up as you go. But one interesting thing about that organ, it has a horseshoe console.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to play. I feel like I'm in a different era there.
Yeah, that's what they used in theaters around here, theater organ consoles.
That's in Amsterdam. Bob Hedstrom. We were waiting on the bus. We were on 1981 going around looking at organs in Holland and France, and they were. I thought that would make a good picture. Anyway, and then I took that picture of Paul listening to an Art Schnitger organ in Holland, and he didn't realize I was going to take the picture, and he gave me a dirty look when he realized I took it. So he was deeply engrossed, probably listening to a Sweet Hour of Prayer or something like that on the organ. I don't know.
Yeah, played in D flat on the organ with Mean Don't Deverman.
And that was the farewell dinner. That's Warren Hutton. He was a long-time University of Alabama organ professor, and that was his wife taking a picture of me, taking a picture of them.
And Warren played recitals here, and I played recitals at his church in Tuscaloosa. Yeah, there's a retirement photo.
What organ was that?
That's at Main Street Methodist.
Okay.
Is that all?
That's it.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to talk about organs in the city here. The first pipe organ in Hattiesburg is probably the Henry Pilcher and Sons, Opus 780, installed at Trinity Episcopal Church in 1913. Keep in mind that Hattiesburg was founded in 1882, I believe, so that organ, the church was built about 1911 or 12, and so that organ was new at that time. And it served faithfully until it was removed in 1967 to make way for the then festival organ by Charles McManus, Opus 68. That instrument was augmented by Moeller in 1992, Opus M6446. There was a Moeller organ at Main Street Methodist Church installed in 1915. That's probably the second oldest organ in the city. This one consisted of 2 manuals. In 1977, the organ was replaced with an organ built by the Andover Organ Company, of which there's more, he'll tell you about it. Opus 81 of 2 manuals and 30 ranks of pipes. A rank of pipes is a set of pipes that sounds all the same. And the manual is usually 61 notes, that is 61 pipes. And the pedal is usually 32, but we say, 61 ranks or 42 ranks or whatever. The 3-manual organ by Moeller, Opus 5699, was installed in First Presbyterian Church in 1928. He played there. What can you tell us about that organ?
Well, it was fun to play. Had a harp on the wall inside the chambers, and so you go back here and play it, and those mallets would be beating that harp on the wall. It was really kind of cool. But I played there when they first before they moved out west. Before that was Graham Ferguson, and before that was Marilyn Pound. So these folks all played. Graham applied for that job in 1975, and I just started playing the organ at Broad Street Methodist, and so I applied for the organ too, but they weren't going to hire a 15-year-old over a guy who had a doctorate from Michigan, so I didn't get the job. But I eventually got it when he left, so that was fun.
I gave many lessons on that organ. This organ still may exist. I think it does, but it hasn't been played in years. That's the location of True Light Baptist Church now. Next instrument is one I know nothing about. The list provided by the Organ Historical Society states that Moeller, Opus 2528 of around 1917, was installed at the Strand Theater. I don't know where that was. It was downtown someplace, but it's ceased to exist now. Bay Street Presbyterian purchased a Moeller organ in 1923, which was a 2-manual instrument and was installed by T.J. Williams Valziers on his honeymoon. Williams was of an organ building family that sold many Aeolian Skinner instruments in the South that included First Press and Laurel and many other illustrious organs. This organ was updated in 1974. Miss Lucille Holloway was organist there for many years, and I knew her. She was organist until several other then were organists. And I've substituted at that church a number of times, and the organ is still in good shape. As I said, she was organist until 1974. Another organ by Henry Pilcher, Opus 1251, was installed at Mississippi Women's College, now William Carey University, in 1925. This instrument was destroyed in a fire sometime in the early 1960s. This was replaced by a small Reuter organ, Opus 1466, in 1964.
That organ was in the old Tatum Court, if you know anything about William Carey, at the big administration building. And so, and the whole music department, I think, existed in Tatum Court before they built the new music building, which is the one that's still there. And the Tatum Court's no longer there anymore now, so.
The next on our organ odyssey is the University of Southern Mississippi, known then as Mississippi Southern College. A Frazee organ was purchased in 1946, I think, and was housed in Bennett Auditorium. Marjorie Jackson, the organ instructor at the time, made her taped recital on this instrument, which gained her a Fulbright scholarship to study with Floor Peters in Holland. His concert piece is dedicated to her. And we exchanged recitals, I think back in the 1970s. He played here, and I played in her church in Texas. This organ was discarded shortly after I arrived. It didn't sound too bad, but it wasn't very stylish for the time. 2 practice organs were added to Mississippi Southern's domain in 1946, Moeller Opus 7438 and 7439. These are small practice organs and consisted of a limited number of pipes. I spent hours and hours.
I did too.
And
the nicest thing about those organs when I came in 1977 was to get them started, you would push the on button and then you would shake it, and it would finally come on. So.
They were rebuilt many times. There's the electrical motor in there. I went in and disconnected all the things and got the service department over here to rebuild electrical motors, but they served until I retired some years ago. Now, at USM in the 1960s, the need for a new organ was keenly felt. The Frazee organ, which was in Bennett Auditorium, was kind of a cobbled. The swell was a Robert Morton theater organ, and that was cobbled. After the war, the Second World War, there was a tremendous pent-up demand for organs, and so this was all that the university could get at that time, but there were such backlogs. And so that was in Bennett Auditorium, and it didn't sound too bad. As I said, Marjorie Jackson, one of my predecessors, recorded on that organ for a Fulbright grant. My wish for a Holtkamp organ, which is what we had at Drake and Syracuse when I studied there respectively, the contract for this organ was signed in 1967, and the organ was delivered in 1969. The cost was at that time $60,000. Now, several years ago when this storm came through here, this organ was then rebuilt. There was new whatever added to it. And I think $250,000 was spent on it at that time. I played the, let's see. I played the first recital on this instrument in 1970. Others followed. We had a whole series of recitals, and Ernie Hoffman and James Thrash, both USM students. Russell Saunders, then in 1970, opened this recital, opened this instrument in, I think, April 28th of 1970. And we had just a packed auditorium. It seated about 330 at that time, considerably less now. But then during the 1970s, we had a church music workshop. And Robert Baker of New York was the first recitalist. Then Dr. Vernon DeCar, of whom you saw the picture, of the Juilliard School of Music, came in 1971. Millard Andrews of Oklahoma came in 1973, I believe. Other recitals took place featuring both students and visiting organists. As you saw, Heinz Lohmann was here. During the 1970s, my classes continued to thrive. Kay Johnson Giles played both her masters and bachelors and masters. Paul Lee came on the scene about 1974, I believe, and get a page here, and played several undergraduate recitals. I remember he played the EU sagas that are just incredibly difficult pieces. And he played the one Icarus, which is, Icarus was going around the sun, that's a fable, and then his wax on his wings melted, so he played the EU sagas. Then Ben Lane, who passed last year, played his undergraduate recital in 1979. Incidentally, I played for his Indiana's wedding the same year. He went on to have an illustrious career in church music and most recently at the Episcopal Cathedral in Orlando. I was planning on going to England with him and his choir, but he died at the age of 62. As I said, Heinz Lohmann, the editor of the Breitkopf and Hertel edition of Bach, was here, I think, in the 1980s. Then I had an alumni series on this organ, and then Jimmy Thrash and Ernie Hoffman both played on that. We presented a workshop in 1974, and Arthur Poyster came as a clinician. Then I had one in the 70s, and Paul Lee gave the opening recital, and several organists played in the master class. The same format was followed in another year with Russell Saunders providing the master class. Robin Rogers played the recital. A special word about Robin. She started in 1974 and was brilliant. A newspaper article related how she became a sophomore immediately after entering USM. She had examined out all the classes for freshman year. She made a perfect score in the ACT exam and recorded only one B in a dance class here. She did her undergraduate and graduate program. And as to the MMTA competitions, we cleaned up in the 1970s. Which brings me to the Jeff McLelland era. He entered in 1977, I believe. I gave him the wedge prelude fugue, the most difficult of the Bach prelude fugues, long and very difficult, very complicated, and probably the most difficult of all the Bach organ works. He learned it and performed it, and I remember thinking, this guy will have a bright future in music. I recollect assigning him the Outburst of Joy of Messiaen, which is another extremely difficult piece, which he played very well. He went on to study with Russell Saunders at Eastman and did his doctorate at Warren Hutton in Alabama. Good students came to study in the 1990s. John Gates, who recently passed, he was in Natchez at the Presbyterian Church there on a Jimmy Williams organ, Elwyn Skinner. John Gates passed. He was here during that time, and he played very well. I remember his playing of the Bach G minor Prelude and Fugue, or Fantasy and Fugue. And then there was Jim Lofton, also, who had a bright future in church music, but his life ended prematurely. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's going to talk about the organ of First Press.
So I guess you're wondering why we're dressed this way. This is the official USM organ department uniform. And so, but sorry, Kay didn't get the memo. So, but at any rate, one year back, I guess in 1980, was getting inducted in Pi Kappa Lambda, and he was my sponsor, and we both showed up with the same outfit on there too. So I guess we just are prone to do that. I'm not sure how that works, but I was, as he said, I was an organist at First Presbyterian. I taught at William Carey College for about almost 20 years after I finished my degree at Eastman and came back. And I was organist in the late 80s and early 90s at First Press. And the preacher came to me and said, put together an organ committee and choose an organ because we're going to need one at the new church. And I said, great. And so I decided I wanted a tracker organ, which, you know, is a different type of organ than we had in town. The only other tracker was the one at Andover at the Methodist Church. And so I piled Jeff Clearman, who was a student of mine then, and Paul into my car, and we headed to Dallas and played organs there, and went down to Houston and played organs there, and went to Victoria and played organs there, and there were a whole lot of stories that came out of that trip. And that I can't really tell you. One though, when we were halfway between Dallas and Houston and we're hungry, it was about 3 o'clock and hadn't had lunch, and there was a sign that said Bubba's Barbecue, so we pulled off it, and Bubba himself came and sat down with us at the table, and because there's nobody else in there. And after talking for a little bit, he said, well, what do you boys do for a living? And Paul said, you're not going to believe this. And I said, we play the pipe organs, we're all organists. And he thought for a minute, and he said, well, I guess everybody's got to do something. And he got up and left. And he was gone. But But so it was a good trip, and so then I went and took a trip up to Minneapolis and met Lynn Dobson, who showed me around a whole bunch of different organs up there, and finally took me to one of his organs in Stillwater, Minnesota, and I said, that's it. And so that, I'm not a replica, but that type of organ is what we had put in at First Presbyterian here, and it's still playing, and it's a beautiful instrument. And so that was in 1990 when that was put in. I went on in 2000 to Independent Presbyterian, where I am now in Birmingham, and immediately had to deal with a new organ project there too, because their organ was failing. They had a fire in the church in 1992, and when they came in to get the smoke odor out of the sanctuary, they used an ozone material that was successful in getting that, but the only problem was it ate up all the leather in the organ, which all those leather pouches, and it oxidized a lot of the pipes in the chambers. And so from then on, that organ never really worked, and I would go in every Sunday morning and turn it on to see what worked, so I could play church. It was that bad. So we finally got a new organ installed in 2012, and I decided to go with Lynn Dobson because of my affiliation with them, and because they're just really one of the best organ builders in the world. And I also know John Panning, who is now the president and tonal designer, who we worked really well. We probably went through 40 different designs before we finally came up with what we have. It's a fabulous instrument. I'll be happy to show it to you if you want to come by. But the tragic part of that is that early last week, the Dobson Organ Company in Lake City, Iowa burned down, caught fire, and so they're in the process of reestablishing all of that and getting going again. So it's an incredible thing. They've got organs all over the world, literally. England, they were building one for Australia when it burned. They got it in Philadelphia Symphony Hall and the big Catholic Cathedral in L.A. It's just all over the place.
St. Thomas, New York.
St. Thomas, New York. It's just a very, very important company. But it's our pleasure to be here and talk about organs, and
I've got a few more things to say.
Go for it.
Court Street Methodist. While servicing Mr. Norwood, the existing organ about 1960, the technician inadvertently left the soldering iron in the on position, and when he left the building one evening, the church caught fire and was burned up in a conflagration. The insurance company covered the cost of the building, and an organ was donated by Norwood that year. But it was a poor replacement and is now not being used. I guess it's sealed up in the building. Then there's a case of First Baptist Church, built a new edifice about 1950, located on West Pine Street. I bought the old church. I knew some people who went to the old church, John Eaton to be exact. But I don't know anything about if there was an organ in the old church. First Baptist built a new church. I think Clyde Bryan was the pastor there. They commissioned a new organ of 3 manuals and 31 ranks from the Kilgan Organ Company, the same as in the funeral parlor, in 1953. Virgil Fox played the dedication recital, which included the Roebuck Sonata on the 94th Psalm. I searched for the Ernie's father, left me a copy of that program, but I can't find it among my things in the.
My first organ teacher, Miss Cowan, went to that recital in She told me about that.
Yeah.
He came out with a cape on. It was horrible. That's what she said.
But he could play. Oh my goodness. The instrument was presided over by Mrs. Helen McWhorter, and this organ was incorporated in the new instrument by Reuter, Opus 2074, 51 ranks in 1987.
I'll tell you one thing about that organ. They had a festival trumpet in that organ that was so loud that he was at the church across the street, so they would just open the doors and they would play the organ at the Baptist church for the hymns at the Episcopal church, and it sounded fine. It was a loud stop.
Yeah. I mentioned the organ at the Hewlett Funeral Parlor on Bay Street. This included, quote, the organ designed by Edward Hewlett, J.E. Hewlett, son of Dr. and Mrs. J.E. Hewlett, owners of the Hewlett Undertaking Company. This is built by the Wicks Organ Company of Highland, Illinois. The instrument is of the direct electric type and is built on the unit system. It has 6 sets of stops and is sweet-coned and powerful. It cost about $5,000 in 1933, that's the height of the Depression, and it was estimated it would have cost about $97,000 in 2018. This is taken from the brochure that we saw on the screen earlier. Mary Louise, pictures a picture of Mary Louise Hewlett at the console, taken in the 1930s. Organ was not built in it was not invented in 1930 until 35. Do you have anything more?
I'm just here for comic relief. Apparently. So, no, I don't actually. Is that?
Hardy Street Baptist Church, formerly Temple Baptist Church, purchased a 3-manual organ from the Reuter Organ Company, Opus 1328, in 1962. This organ had 34 ranks of pipes. Marilyn Mason, an organ professor at the University of Michigan, dedicated this instrument shortly after its installation. I played my first faculty recital we had on the board. I played my first faculty recital there in 1965. I played another faculty recital there in 1967. Thereafter, I played at Trinity Church on the newly installed Mcmanus. Records show that Main Street Baptist Church bought a 2-manual organ from Henry Pilcher, Opus 1438 in 1928. This is a church on North Main Street that was recently demolished. The organ this church also bought a 2-manual organ, Opus 7504 in 1947. Paul Lee says that I got my pages mixed up, that Dr. Crawford he had a house behind the funeral parlor, Hewlett Funeral Parlor down there, that he paid for that organ. And then later on, they got another Moeller organ, when the new church was built down there.
No, actually, they got the Moeller in the old, when it was still downtown.
Yeah.
And they kept the choir robes on the second floor behind the organ chambers in the hall, because these wide halls. And for some reason or another, the choir robes caught on fire. And so they got the fire out, but there was a lot of smoke damage in the organ chambers and in the hall. So when they were doing the repainting and cleaning of carpets, they said, "What do you want us to clean up the organ chambers too?" And the secretary said, "Sure." So they went in there and took all the pipes out, squirted water all down in there, and sucked all the water up and everything. Of course, they just stuck pipes back wherever they could find a hole. And so, needless to say, the organ didn't work anymore. So insurance paid for a really good rebuild of that organ. Madison and Lindsay Services did that. And so when they moved to the present location, Madison and Troy moved that organ out there, and that was a very successful instrument. So
I might say that Billy Lewis sold electronic organs, sold Allen organs, and he had a list of all the organs, and he sold organs to every church in South Mississippi. And he could go, Baptist church, he could, Catholic church, he could talk Catholic. Oh my goodness, he sold lots of organs. Parkway Heights United Methodist Church purchased a new Chance organ, Opus 2162, in 1998. This organ consisted of 33 ranks spread over 3 manuals. The instrument replaced an Allen electronic organ. Charles Thomas was the organist there, then followed by Pamela Pollard. University Baptist purchased a new Moeller instrument, Opus 11568, in 1982. This organ consisted of 13 ranks and 2 manuals. The organ replaced an electronic instrument. Sam Polk and Nan Porter were the organists at that time. You talked about First Presbyterian. Do you have anything else? No. I think that's all. And thank you very much for being here.
Welcome to our live stream.
Good afternoon. This time I come to you not with a plea, but in fact to start our event. So rest assured I am not here to badger you, but here to welcome you. My name is Harlan Mapp, and thank you so much for coming out to today's presentation. This is FestivalSouth's celebratory performance of 50-ish years since the installation of the Holtkamp organ here. I say 50-ish because technically last year should have been the 50th anniversary, but that whole COVID thing really got in the way. So we're going to celebrate 50 this year, even if it is 51 or 52. So I know most of you all probably were looking forward to a wonderful performance entirely done by Dr. Jeff McLelland, but you know, just a funny little incident caused that little baby finger of his to get broken, and there is no other instrument in the world that really requires the full use of all your appendages and all of your limbs than the organ. So thankfully, former professor of organ, Dr. Paul Andersen, and one of his former students, Kay Giles, have agreed to take on part of the load, and so now you get one concert with 3 people for the price of 1, so really, you're winning. So as always, we would like to thank Forest County for sponsoring all the events in our Festival Music series in partnership with University of Southern Mississippi School of Music, William Carey, Partners for the Arts, and Mississippi Music. And today's event was especially sponsored by Dr. Andersen. That was before he knew that he would have to play it. You get what you pay for, quite literally. And we're still rounding down on the final week of Festival South. And this week has really been quite fantastic. As you've all shown today, you are more than willing to show up and turn out for all of the events. And so if you don't have your tickets for Take 5 on Thursday night at the Hattiesburg Community Arts Center, there's 22 seats left, and we added 40 seats on top of what we already had. So don't rest on your laurels thinking, I'll get my ticket at the door. You probably won't. So go ahead, order your tickets now, get them online. That's Sam Bruton doing a Dave Brubeck tribute concert. It's Take 5. Go ahead and get them. Same goes true for our Motown event. We've got about 75 more tickets left to sell. So jump on that at about, what is it, Mike, like 950 that we're offering. We've only got 75 left. Come on, Hattiesburg, get your tickets now. That's an event you won't want to miss with Vasti Jackson, G.C. Cameron. Make sure you get your tickets. And now a little selfish, shameless plug. If you don't have anything to do tomorrow, and I say that wholeheartedly, come out to Southmouth Deli at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm putting on a coffee concert. I'd love to say they saved the best for last, but I think Dr. Sanchez just plugged me in wherever I would fit, and that's fine. But I'm going to say they saved the best for last. So make sure you set your alarms for at least 8 o'clock, because from Hattiesburg, you've got about a 15 to 20 minute drive out to Southmouth. So you want to get there on time, because I've got something you won't want to miss. And so, if you thoroughly enjoy today, if you thoroughly enjoy everything you've seen at Festival South, we've got multiple ways that you can be part of our donorship. I don't know where to go with donorship, Drew. If you would like to be a donor, we have multiple ways that you can do so. We've got a text to give campaign going on. You can donate online at festivalsouth.org. But again, I will always be waiting for you at the door, jar in hand, willing to accept any size bill you would like to throw in. So if you've enjoyed Festival South, put the money in the jar, donate it online, shoot us a text. We love your money because it helps make Festival South happen year after year. It's not just, you know, going into the pockets. It's coming back to you to provide events like this for years to come. Please consider being a donor with Festival South in whichever way you choose. And with that being said, help me welcome to the stage for the first portion of the concert, Dr. Paul Andersen.
sounds magnificent. Let's get them with it.
Thank you all for being here. This is a fabulous crowd. I'm sorry I couldn't play the whole program, but I'm so happy to be able to participate in a part of it. This first piece I'm going to play by Vincent Persicati for pedals alone, 3 movements. It's a piece I've always wanted to learn, so this, of course, gave me the opportunity to learn it. Vincent Persicati was a longtime professor at Juilliard, but before he went to Juilliard, he was in Philadelphia working at the conservatory in Philadelphia, which I don't know if that conservatory exists anymore. But he wrote this piece in 1940 before he kind of came up with his own style. So you hear glimpses of Hindemith and Aaron Copland and all sorts of things like that. I tried to put ideas into your head. So the first piece I think sounds a little bit like Alfred Hitchcock, or maybe a carnival of some sort. And then the second movement is very expressive. You hear 2 melody lines, 1 in each foot, kind of interplaying between each other. And then the last piece is just a romp. That's the only way I can explain that. All 3 of the movements are in 3 parts, A, B, A. So you'll hear a middle section that's different, and then the return of the A theme, and they're very short, so enjoy. And I have to spend a little time building my nest. I once saw a pianist play a recital and sat on a phone book, and then got up off the recital and tore 2 pages out, and then sat back down. This next piece, given the fact that I couldn't play more than anything with this hand here, I challenged my best friend Howard Keever to write me a piece. And he said, okay, I'll do it. I don't think he was of right mind when he said he would do that. Matter of fact, we were at the Cahaba Brewery in Birmingham, Alabama when he said that. So a lot of people think this is written after the Cahaba River in Birmingham. It's really after the Cahaba Brewery. So the different sections, since sonata form, different sections take on characters of different beers of the brewery. So at some point you'll hear an IPA. If you know anything about beer, you'll hear an IPA, you'll hear a smoky porter, a Baltic porter, or you'll hear a bitter sour ale, and all this kind of stuff. So use your imagination and enjoy this. It's a fabulous piece of music, and I've enjoyed learning it. Thank you, Howard.
Festival Music is FestivalSouth's original series for concertgoers. From classical to jazz, Broadway to blues and beyond, these events feature some of the greatest music and performers of all time. Our festival headliners, weeknight and afternoon events, bring world-class cultural experiences to the Pine Belt, making Hattiesburg the perfect cultural destination for local residents and tourists.
Live stream ending.